Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Magic Pause podcast. I'm your host, Annalena, and welcome to 2025. I'm truly wishing you a wonderful, healthy, prosperous year ahead, and that really all of your heart's desires are coming to manifestation. And with that, I also want to remind you that you have some very unique gifts and talents to share with the world, and it is my wish for you that you find the courage to share them more boldly with the world. Because, believe it or not, there are so many people that you can impact with the unique talents that you were given. Like, you have that for a reason, and it's our responsibility. I believe that wholeheartedly, to share them with the world. So, I just wanted to remind you of that. And now you're probably going to be curious, okay, what are we going to talk about today? And I kind of tuned into what would be of the most benefit to you guys. And I also wanted to keep it very simple and easy. And then what came to me is that, well, there was this beautiful event that I hosted in December, early December 2024, which was the True Sidereal Summit, where I interviewed over 12 or 13 guest speakers, where we talked about all things True Sidereal Astrology, human design, and gene keys, our personal experience with that. And we got so much beautiful feedback, so many requests to do the summit again this year and the years to come. And since many of you probably were part of the summit, or maybe many of you actually missed it, I decided that the very first interview that was part of the summit was with Athen Chimenti. So he is the founder of True Sidereal Astrology. He has deeply impacted my own path because I started to feel a strong pull towards all things True Sidereal at the beginning of 2024. It kind of started already at the end of 2023, and I actually had him already on the podcast. I think it was in February of 2024. We had a wonderful conversation. I think you guys loved it. And then I actually studied with Athen as well, the True Sidereal Astrology, because I wanted to understand it at a deeper level. And yeah, I never looked back. It just all felt so right. This is also how the True Sidereal Summit came about. And again, if you missed it or not, the summit, this interview is worth to watch a million times. It was so incredibly amazing. And to just give you a little bit of a hint, it's really all about aligning with nature. I mean, what else are we looking for? So enjoy this conversation with Athen. Welcome, everyone, to the True Sidereal Summit, where we explore all things astrology, human design, and gene keys to help you step confidently into your highest calling. I am your host, Annalena Fuchs, and I'm super delighted today because I have probably our most important guest of the summit. His name is Athen Chimenti, and he's an astrologer, educator, and leading expert in the field of True Sidereal Astrology. And he's dedicated to spreading the word about True Sidereal and how powerful it is, bringing clarity and direction to people's lives. And Athen has helped more than 5,000 people from around the world gain clarity through his astrology readings. He has also taught more than 100 astrologers to become professionals in the field, and thousands more through his video course and his amazing YouTube channel. And I'm just so happy you're here. Thank you for being here, Athen.
Great to be here, Annalena. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I was very happy to find you and your website sometime. It was about a year ago, I think, more or less, where this whole sidereal came into my life because I was mainly into human design and gene keys. And I had heard about the term sidereal a couple of times, but I just wasn't interested, to be honest. But something shifted because it just came up more. I wasn't looking for it, to be honest. But as I did some research, I found then True Sidereal Astrology. I started to look into it. I also decided to study with you as well because I just wanted to understand a little bit more how it also impacts human design. And it was the first time that I personally pulled an astrology chart and I got the report you create on your website. And I was like, wow, this is me. And almost like speechless. I was like, there's just nothing that I want to like change here or have to question. And yeah, since then, my business has really shifted a lot because I was practicing everything based on tropical, and I had to follow my true calling with a true sidereal. And I have to say, like, your explanations were just so profound and helpful for me to really understand also why I didn't resonate as much with tropical astrology. So I just would love to hear your story of how this all came about. Like, what happened? Did you start with tropical astrology? Were you always into astrology? And then how did the True Sidereal came about?
Yeah, so very similar to what you just described. I was doing tropical. I knew about sidereal, probably very similar to how you knew about it. I understood the kind of this mentally in this concept that, okay, you have tropical and sidereal, and like tropicals in the West and sidereals in the East, and they're just two different systems, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, it didn't really hit me until that day that there was supposed to be a full moon in Gemini, I think. And I went out with my smartphone, and this is right around the time when these apps started to come about. And I held it up to that full moon, and it sure enough was right in the middle of Taurus. And so that really like hit me. And I was like, really starting to question what I was doing. And so from there, I transitioned from tropical to like kind of general sidereal, mainstream. And then once I found out that mainstream sidereal also uses these kinds of even 30 degrees that don't represent the actual size of the constellations, I could do the same thing with the phone and hold it up, and it would still be like in a different sign. Like with mainstream sidereal, they might say it's in Cancer, but it's actually in Leo, for example. So yeah, so since then I transitioned from mainstream sidereal to true sidereal. Luckily, there's been the technology to do that, like with Prometheus, the astrology software that allows for this. And it's been it's been a journey. And also, of course, for myself, but for everyone I've been doing readings with, a lot of people do find it to be very accurate and very helpful.
Yeah. And so, what did you experience first in terms of resistance in the community? Because I think in general, the only constant we ever have in life is change, right? And at the same time, we humans, we like safety and we like what we know. And I think most of us just know tropical astrology. I think anything with you open up a newspaper, the horoscope, when you say like, oh, I'm an Aquarius, and I think we both are actually, we thought we were Aquarius, but it's Capricorn, right? And so how did that come about? Because I know it can be quite an identity crisis for people. And how did you experience that?
Like in terms of working with people or in terms of with my own identity.
No, just like in kind of the general public, was there resistance come up
Mm,
or because it's a big, I think also threat sometimes for people, right? When we have
yeah,
bought into a belief, that was shocking for me, I have to be honest. When you say you looked in the sky and was like, hold on, it's in Taurus, it's not in Gemini. That's what the newspaper is saying, right? Or
yeah,
in general. And it made me realize as a human how easily we just believe things and
yeah,
we don't question it, right? And I
yeah,
think then also we identify with something so strongly, and then when all of a sudden it's like, well, like hold on, like look up in the sky, it's a little bit different. Like, I mean, did
yeah.
you have people like that wanted to fight it, or no, this is wrong? Like, what? How did you experience that?
Yeah. So at first it was very battlegrounds kind of a thing. So I started on YouTube, and I'm doing these videos, and people are messaging me constantly like, you have the signs wrong, or I don't resonate with this, I'm totally this way. And but after a while, it just the noise kind of stopped. I would say maybe after like year 3 or 4, like it just kind of settled and just kind of stopped. And I don't know if it's because more and more people, I mean, trust me, I still get the emails. I
Mm.
still get the emails, with the hardcore tropicalists and stuff, but they're much, much more rare now than ever. But at first, the thing is I approached it with just, I'm not trying to change anybody, and I'm not trying to spread this thing as like some kind of a everyone should do it religious kind of a, type of thing. It's just, it is a perspective. And I believe that all these tools have perspectives, like even human design and its different forms. The tropical form, numerology is a different perspective, tarot is a different perspective. And yeah, tropical and sidereal, different perspectives. So I just try to approach it with as much of a, open mind, letting people kind of gravitate towards it if they are resonating with it without trying to force it down their throats or try to like really push too much. So I don't really argue. If it doesn't resonate, I say fine, uh, it's just a different system. Use the one that resonates the most with you. What I find is that a lot of this actually just happens naturally. It seems to be like sidereal is kind of like a next evolution where if we think of humanity kind of progressing and evolving and individuals evolving, like myself, tropical served me very well for many years when I used
Yeah.
it. It was the first time that I actually started to like start to see myself from a kind of an objective view, like, personality types and this kind of a thing. And it was extremely helpful to help me start to become more self-aware and start to personally develop. But for me, it ran its course, and so um, that's how I see it with a lot of others too. Tropical kind of serves a point, serves its purpose up to a certain point. And then when it's time, we're ready. And again, that's why we don't want to force anyone because it's a process. It's like
Yeah.
forcing a plant to grow. It comes naturally. It comes naturally, and then there's no force. And we just let it evolve. And then those that gravitate towards true sidereal, it's time for them to gravitate
Mhm.
towards true sidereal. And I believe it's the future. So I believe,
Yeah.
as humanity goes, we will transition from tropical and more into using the true sky.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's also something that really drew me to you because I always have a hard time when there is like a very fundamental view and then everything else is wrong all of a sudden, right? Like you say, it's just a different perspective. Because just like you as well, I spent over 4 years with a tropical and it changed my life in all ways or forms. For me, more through the human design perspective, but it's in essence the same, right? Because it's based on tropical astrology. And I want to kind of use a little bit of your story to highlight the importance of trusting yourself because you could have very easily given up, right? Because when we are sensitive to other people's opinions, and especially when people disagree with us, I think for most of us online entrepreneurs or new thought leaders, new world creators, however you want to call it, I think if we're not seeing resistance, it's actually like not a good sign because there is change is always a threat for humans. It creates a certain unsafety for us. And I just want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart that you stick with it because you knew deep inside, and I have seen it just a little bit, but I think much milder with human design. I have to say that the majority has been very positive feedback, but here and there was a couple of comments I also received that you mentioned. But I can only imagine like when it was completely new. And you started, was it 7, 8 years ago? When did you start your YouTube channel and public?
No, this was back in 2012, late 2012. So we're at
Oh,
like 12 years,
oh,
13 years now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, here you go. So it just also shows, and this is so much your Capricorn, right? And True Sidereal. So it's your perseverance just shows there. And it's not always going to be easy in the beginning that when there's something new. I actually think it's a good sign when there is resistance come up. And it's also like, yeah, we cannot change the world by fighting the old and making it wrong. It's more like, hey, I'm just showing you a new way. And then people get to decide, where they want to go, if they want to play with both. That's also something I see in the beginning. I think people are like kind of playing with both charts, tropical and true sidereal. And then eventually it's like, okay, you know what? That's for me right now. Like, I'm just like, I have only interest in my true sidereal chart at this point, and that's individual. That's everybody's story with that. So yeah, I just think it's really
Yeah.
powerful how you have stick with it.
Thank you. And like, I just see it as it's the nature. So like
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that. But for me, it didn't take any dedication, like dedication for my work and dedication
Mhm.
for being a good astrologer and doing the best I can as an astrologer. But I mean, True Sidereal is just kind of what's the word? It's just kind of an obvious thing that I couldn't do it any other way. And it's not me.
Mhm.
Um, I don't feel like it's me sticking to it as much as it's like, okay, well, this is just the sky. And you know, you either live with nature or and I believe honestly, like not just in astrology, but in all professions. Well, one, we're seeing a resurgence of really just in all the industries and all the fields, things coming back to a more natural state, which means more health and more balance. And I just view astrology as just one of the many industries right now that are going towards a more natural and balanced state again.
Mm-hmm.
After, however many hundreds of years with, basically the Industrial Revolution with technology, we've really removed ourselves from nature and we're like infants with these
Yeah.
tools, and we're trying to figure out how to work with nature, but it's happening. And so True Sidereal is, working with nature now. And astrology is a very powerful tool, but I believe that it's even more powerful if we use it in as much in accordance as nature is, with nature as much as we can. So that's all I see. And I couldn't do it any other way, even if I
Yeah.
tried, at this point.
No,
Yeah.
no. No, and that's the beauty of when you really trust yourself and you don't let yourself be influenced by other people just to keep the peace and please everyone, because that's not how we create change. And I also love what you say, because that's exactly how I feel. It's like, yeah, we're just aligning with nature. Like there's not even, I don't even know what I have to explain, because it's like, yeah, just look up, it's straight up in the sky in that sense. And what I also love so much is that, I think we had to experience the unnatural way. Or I always use, I mean, plastic for some reason comes up for me because plastic is very unnatural, right? Because it's kind of, we made it comfortable in a way where it's fixed, it's easy, right? But it actually, I mean, it's kind of like it's easy in the moment, but it creates, because it's not nature, it has created a lot of chaos. It has a lot of disharmony for people and misalignment where we are, yeah, forcing ourselves to live a life that is not who we really are. And sometimes we have to experience the even more discomfort of that, or even the pain of that, to wake up, be so agitated, like I can no longer do this. And now there's like, yeah, it's actually very easy, right? It's just like we just have to open our eyes, we have to look up into the sky. And yeah, and it's not this exact same 12 signs, everything is the same size, right? Though it's
Yeah.
also
Perfect.
I live here in Florida, and it's kind of a funny analogy, but I think it makes sense because there are a lot of house communities here that is very cookie cutter. And
Mhm.
uh, it doesn't light me up, but when I see areas, we have couple here in the area, but not as much as when you go to the Pacific Northwest or to Europe, for example, where every house is so unique and different. It has so much character. And that's exactly what I feel when I tune into True Sidereal Astrology, because the signs that
Mhm.
they're from, one is really large, Pisces is huge, Virgo is huge, but then Ophiuchus is super small, Aries is very small. So it's that the variety we have in nature, and it's the opposite of boring, because if everything is the same, it's kind of this like assembly line kind of experience, right? That just comes up for me as we're speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. We want as humans everything to be square, like in a box. And I was thinking about the same thing. I was walking down the street, and the street I was walking down had all the trees like perfectly cut, into perfect circles and
Yeah.
everything. And I was like, that's such a classic human thing to, like you said, I think feel safe in having control and
Mm,
structure over our environment, which is necessary. Don't get me wrong. I'm not
yeah.
bashing on tech. We're not bashing on technology or anything, right? So it's just that, that's the ego, and it's a very important, of course, part of life, the ego and animals and all this to want structure and safety and security. But like you said, life doesn't really operate in the kind of symmetry that we're capable of, right? Because like as
Yeah.
a human ego, I mean, we're so in the early stages of evolution, in this 3D world. We want, like I said, like a square, it's like we want everything to be like nice square and perfectly symmetrical. But nature has symmetry that we can barely comprehend. Like we can comprehend like the Fibonacci sequence, but look how long it took us just to do that. Now we see the Fibonacci everywhere in nature, which is a
Yeah.
very dynamic shape, but it's still symmetry and it's still structure. And I do believe that, even though nature is perceived as chaos to the ego, like the ego views it and maybe sees a tree and says, that's not symmetrical. There is, of course, symmetry to it. We're just not evolved enough to see it, I believe. And so we want to take that tree and make it into a square.
Yeah.
So, it's fine. It's great for our security and safety, but as we evolve, yeah, I think we are appreciating more of the not dissymmetry, but we're getting more advanced with our symmetry. And so we can start to now reflect, like, maybe why is Cancer so small? Like you're saying, there's a certain characteristic about Cancer and a reason why it's so small. Why is Leo so large? Maybe this is because that part of ourselves doesn't need to be as prominent. Like when we have like a transit, for example, maybe we need to go through more Leo than we need Cancer in order to learn something, because Leo is maybe more difficult, or Pisces or Virgo is more difficult or takes more time to integrate. Or another way of saying is, like, if you look at the population with mainstream, you're going to have an equal, roughly, because there's like birth rates are a little different at different times of the year, but you're going to have roughly the same amount of signs in the world. Like you're going to have X number of Sagittarius be very close to X number of Capricorns. But when Capricorn's smaller than Sag, why do we need more Sagittarians? Why do we need more Virgos? Why do we need more Pisces and less Cancers? Then you start to think, okay, well, maybe humanity is supposed to have different like needs, like only so we only need so much of that energy in life, or so much of that energy in the year or whatever. So yeah, that's a really cool analogy. I didn't think of it that way in terms of like, and I grew up in Vegas too, so it's very cookie cutter as well.
Oh,
Everything was
right.
built
Yeah.
since the
Vegas.
70s. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's exactly like
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And maybe that's a big part of why I appreciate not dissymmetry, but more advanced symmetry too, because I was raised in that. But yeah, I think it's good to kind of get in that more creative mind, right? The right brain, design a
Yeah.
house in a way that's different and unique and characteristic and creative.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, as we're speaking now, it sparks so much inspiration for me that we as humans, because I think we always have this idea we need to be like others, we need to fit in. And I mean, astrology and human design is just about the opposite, to take us out of the box and like, no, we're different, we're unique, right? Like there may be one person that is totally in a different type of astrology, and but you are totally in true sidereal, and we can coexist, and we need those differences, right? We need the polarities and everything. And because the world also would be super boring if we all would be dressed the same, we all look the same, we're all like saying the same, we all have the same opinion. We're not going to evolve anywhere, right? So
Yeah, totally. And I think being open, like you're saying, and being open-minded to others who have a different opinion, and seeing as all having a unique role to play in the larger creative process, right? Because that is where innovation happens and creativity happens, is everyone bringing a unique angle and a unique perspective. But I'm going to remember that. That's a good quote. There's a quote in there, and I'm going to try to see if I can find it. It has something to do with like, I don't want the whole world to be true siderealist, kind of thing.
uh,
I'm pushing for true sidereal, but you're right. I don't want the whole world to be true siderealist. We do need those
yeah,
tropicalists and
because
traditional.
then it's boring again, right? Exactly. That's so
Yeah.
true. Yeah. And so I would love to hear from you, because I think many people may have this question. So there's sidereal, which we have probably lots of access to also on websites to pull your sidereal chart. I know there's lots of different versions you can pull charts there. And then, so what's the difference now with true sidereal?
Right. So just so it's clear, so tropical is based around the seasons. And so that's saying that right at the spring equinox, we start the zodiac. So every spring equinox starts Aries. So regular sidereal does use the visible sky, but they also use an even 30 degrees like tropical. So they will adjust what they call the ionamsa, or the vernal point, to say, okay, we're going to start the zodiac here. Now, this is still man-made though, because where they start the zodiac is at the end of Pisces, like literally inside Pisces, towards the end of Pisces. And they do this because Pisces is again very large and Aries is very small. So if we're going to make all the signs an even 30 degrees, then we need to trim the large ones and expand the smaller ones. So that's what they do. But again, it's more, it's in my, I don't want to say accurate, but it's more aligned with nature, because it is at least using that vernal point and trying to set the whole zodiac around their actual locations.
Mhm.
But by making all the signs 30 degrees, again, you're taking away from the actual sizes. So there's an argument to be made that, that the astrological wheel is just the cycle of life. And and this is why I still think regular sidereal is still accurate and tropical is still accurate, because it's a cycle of life. And if you're just dividing that cycle up into 30 degrees each or into 12 equal parts, you're still getting a lot of value from that. It's like, just like you can divide the world into 12 parts and segment the world, but you can do that, but you would say it's more natural to segment it by maybe the land masses, or the what you'd say the continents, which aren't like man-made. It's just they're predefined by nature. So yeah, so true sidereal is using the actual sizes. So that's what I think is more predefined by nature. You could say that, why did our ancestors choose these signs? Because when you do look at Sagittarius or any other sign, it could be anything. Why is Leo a lion, and why isn't the head of Leo part of Cancer, and why did they start it here and end it here? So there is definitely a question to be had about true sidereal, that even though it is the visible sky, we also have to realize that our ancestors did choose these constellation boundaries, or these particular stars, to be associated with it. I think that's getting closer to nature. I think our ancestors were much closer to nature, and I think what they chose has been very accurate, as we've seen with our charts. But again, it's like, we never have that full picture. So we're just doing our best to, I think, get as close to nature as possible, while at the same time still have some kind of symmetry that we can work with. You know what I mean? And I think tropical is, very devoid of the visible sky, but it still uses the seasons, which is nature. It's using an even 30 degrees, so we can kind of make it quite exacting and calculating. Sidereal uses the visible sky, but it's also 30 degrees, so it's also quite symmetrical and quite calculating. And with true sidereal, we use the visible sky, and we use what our ancestors decided were the size of the constellations, which still has a man-made influence, being that it was our ancestors. But I still think a little bit closer to nature because of the reasons they decided to use them. And of course, then the accuracy that we're seeing with it. So it's kind of a dance. It's like we're always just trying to stay true to nature, while at the same time use technology and use tools, tool is something that, is man-made. And so it's like, how, deriving tools from nature where we're not totally tribal and like totally living like without clothes or without homes or without technology. And we're using technology in a way that is as symbiotic with nature as humanly possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I think is the goal. And I think these are just kind of certain different ways of doing that, let's say, between tropical sidereal and true sidereal.
Yeah, no, I love it. And like you say, right, I also have this conversation sometimes with my clients now, because we want to get it perfect, right? We want to get it right. And then we find something else and, oh, we can do it this way. And I always have to remind myself that, well, everything is made up. I mean, we live here on Earth. This is up in the sky. And somehow, even like when our ancestors did this, I mean, it's just amazing if I just think about it with the tools. They didn't have the technology we have today, right? That it was even possible to create this. And I think we have to just trust that life unfolded this way and that they came up with those decisions. And now it's further evolving with that. And there is no guarantee or most likely it's like gonna keep evolving even from here, right? Maybe we're gonna discover, just like some of Chiron and everything wasn't on the radar 1,000 years ago, right? So
yeah, and I'm already like a I don't know what you call it, like a grandfather of the system, because there's already people emailing me with way more evolved and advanced ways of using true sidereal. Like, for example, like, I just got an email a couple of days ago about, like, not letting me know because I already know this, but mentioning that, hey, the moon travels through 14 different constellations, or 50. It's actually 15 or 16. But yeah, they tell me, so it's more than the 13 that we're using. And that's because the moon's orbit is tilted relative to the ecliptic. So with true sidereal, just like with all the other forms of astrology, we're using the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun, and for the most part, the path of the planets. But when you have what we call a planet, the moon, that has a very tilted orbit, or comet like Pluto, I call Pluto a comet, has a very tilted orbit. This then now starts to introduce constellations that aren't actually on the ecliptic, right? So Cetus, for example, or Orion, for example. So yeah, so there's like all these systems saying, well, I don't use them because I'm using a 2D chart. So what do we need? We need to go from a 2D chart to a 3D chart, right? So we're I'm still, you see, I'm already using a system that's outdated in a sense because I'm still using a two-dimensional system. What do we need? We need kind of a three-dimensional system. We need to see the sun is in, Aries, but the moon is in Cetus or Orion or something, a sign that the sun would never be in. So you can see all this with a planetarium, of course, but we need some sort of wheel structure, some sort of, easy to read astrological structure to account for all these variations. So that's just one of many examples of like how even True Sidereal is evolving into something where I can't even keep up with it because of like, software limitations and stuff. But yeah, this is very important that we're always, again, being open-minded and learning and growing and trying to, get as close to nature with still maintaining the power of tools and,
even with the
flow.
houses, right? We could argue, oh, why are they the same house size? We can do different things there too as well. So yeah, and that's what I really love from your energy. You're so open to the evolution, but you're really owning your particular role that you play in that. Because if you don't go really deep into something, right, it also kind of loses its power. But where you're like, hey, this came to me, this is what feels right to me, I'm really owning this, because then we have a very solid foundation also for these other, next evolutions to arise from that. So I think that's really powerful. And this whole thing, because I know you're not super into human design, but we had a conversation before on my podcast, I think, where I kind of explained to you a little bit how, once something in astrology changes, it really changes the human design chart. And that for people is even a bigger deal for some reason, because we have these types in human design. And, in astrology, like, I think people can get away with like, oh, okay, my sign changes, but if you all of a sudden a different type, then people have a little bit of, it's a little bit of a shock to the system, I think. But I'm glad it came to me because I approach human design in a whole different way now. I teach it in a whole different way that's much more expansive, where we also get to see that we are everything at the end of the day, just like all of the signs matter to all of us, right? Everything in the human design chart matters to us, all these energy types we have in human design. And at the end of the day, I always come back to this, like, once you trust yourself, you're good, right? I even feel like we're here to transcend any charts eventually, because once we are in sync with nature, then that's what kind of life was trying to show us, like, right? Hey, I want you to be who you are and express yourself in your most authentic essence. And that's why I'm just so thankful we have these things, because it's almost like this reflection we need, this validation we need. Validation, is that also something that comes with my clients the most? Like, I feel so validated. I feel so seen.
Yeah, what I call confirmation, and that's how I approach my readings. I say, look, like, if anything in this reading does not resonate with you, throw it away. I either made an error or whatever. So just don't, only use this reading for confirmation, because deep down, we all know who we are. We all know what our life path is and all this. And these tools are really just there, I think, for that confirmation. And that's where I feel the most fulfilled with my work, is like, if you can come to me for a reading, you get confirmation on your life path, and then you never need astrology again. This is like, I've done my job. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we don't need it. They're tools. Tools are helpful. But like you said, I think it's all about, it's interesting. It's like life is almost like starting from the source. It goes and expands. So for humans, it's using all, expanding all this technology and all this stuff. But what is going to happen, I think, and what is the point of using all this technology? It's to finally, I think it's to all just come back to the source. It's to realize that, like, what's the point of technology? Well, wait, it's to find peace. It's to find wholeness. It's to find spiritual well-being. So we go out, we expand, we do all this technology, we use all these tools and whatever, all to use them to then just come back to the source again. And that's what I think. And so with the chart, it's like, yeah, we're the whole zodiac, like you said, and enjoy the process. It's fun, it's great. Learn about yourself, get more confirmation. This is all great, but at the end of the day, it's all within you already. And we do, but it's you know, especially now though, it is easy to get off track. It is easy. There's so much noise in life, and this is why tools like human design and astrology are so helpful because yeah, it's very difficult right now to stay true to that inner knowing and the source or God or whatever your philosophy is.
Yeah, I agree. I love everything you said. I'm gonna sign the petition. And before we get off, I would love to hear, like, what is your biggest message for the listeners that you want them to walk away with from this summit, from this conversation?
Well, I guess it's confirmation, right? But as far as True Sidereal goes, yeah, if you haven't yet, check out your chart. So I think your viewers at this point know I've got a chart calculator on the website. There's a free report there, but just see if it resonates with you. And yeah, and then get that confirmation and realize that, of course, you're the whole zodiac, but we are kind of on this quest. We are on this journey. It's what I call the life path. There's certain things I think we're supposed to learn in this life for spiritual growth and spiritual development. I do believe agree with the Hindus on this, that there is this sort of like karmic resolution and future life resolution that we are learning and growing through. And see if astrology is a tool for you that's useful. See if it's useful for you. See if it confirms things for you. And if so, then hopefully it helps. Hopefully, you know, it helps you on your journey. But just start there. Look at the sky. See if it resonates. See if it's gonna be of use to you along your journey.
Wonderful. No, thank you so much. And like you said, yeah, so on Athen's website, Mastering the Zodiac, you can pull your free report. And then if you want to have the longer report, I think you have a 50% discount code that I'm going to share with everyone. It's an amazing report. I can highly recommend it. I got it for myself. It's super detailed. And yeah, it was like this moment where I was like, yeah, I have no more questions. This is me. It's okay to trust myself, you know? So wonderful. Thank you so much, Athen. You shared so much wisdom, and especially this energy of being open-minded and letting all these different systems and opinions and perspectives coexist. I think is just so important because I really think it empowers everyone that's watching and listening that, you know, you get to choose. I think that's really what the big message is. Whatever serves you, use it, let go of the rest. And if that happens to be True Sidereal Astrology or human design or gene keys, now you know who you can talk to. I'm going to also share, so Athen has a beautiful YouTube channel. He shares weekly astrology updates, forecasts every Sunday they come out. Also on his Instagram, and you're also on Facebook. And yeah, thank you so much for your work. I'm super grateful for you. And yeah, thank you for this beautiful conversation, Athen.
Thank you so much, Analia. It's a pleasure.